It's in the name.
Welcome into the good old-fashioned Dislike podcast, where dynasties never die and hate is an extreme word, but just barely. This episode is brought to you by Collision Auto Repair Services in Killen, Alabama. Football is a collision sport, but driving your car shouldn't be. When your car suffers from unnecessary roughness, be sure to call Collision Auto Repair Services at 256-272-2007. That's 256-272-2007. On this podcast, we pick a football rivalry and we submit that rivalry to the panel of dislike. They will come up with reasons why we like one team, dislike one team, and vice versa. By the end, we come to a conclusion of where our loyalties lie, mainly based on non-football things, but that's what's so much fun. Today, we kick off season 3 with a preview of the Southeastern Conference football season. And so we welcome all of you in from Facebook, YouTube, and the TikToks. Feel free to drop your comments or thoughts that about the season and what's coming up, and your hot takes, predictions, any of that for college football. We'll be focusing mainly on the Southeastern Conference. In this episode, our panel of dislike have submitted their predictions for the Southeastern Conference. And so we're excited. College football officially kicks off next Saturday, or this coming Saturday. I think Florida State opens up the season, maybe in a foreign country, if that strikes me correctly. But today we want to talk a little SEC football. Of course, we're welcome to any comments there, either on TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook. And either of those will show up here on the screen if we get a chance to do so. So feel free to walk in. We're going to start off with the Vanderbilt Commodores. The Vanderbilt Commodores may be what most people think are the doormat of the Southeastern Conference. Unfortunately, I like the Vanderbilt Commodores. Maybe it's because I'm not threatened by them at all. My prediction is the Commodores go 3-9 on the season. I am joined in that prediction by Ben and Blake. And so the three of us combined, we outweigh Will and Josh, and the average expectation prediction is 3-9, although Will gives them one more win. He says they'll get to 4, and Josh goes one less than 3-9. He says 2-10 for an average of 3-9 for the Vanderbilt Commodores. Anchor down. I join the Football is Family podcast every once in a while, and the host there, Jeremy, is a big Vandy fan. I'm sure he's not going to appreciate 3-9, but he also lives in the world of reality. 2-10. Oof. That is a brutal season for Vandy. Obviously, they will miss Hotlanta with a 3-9 average there for the panel. Next, we move on to the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies, who will be joined in the conference by longtime rival Texas. I'm excited for all that bad blood to be on full display as the Longhorns join, tied to the hip once again of the Aggies. I remember watching that last game. Justin Tucker, one of my heroes for the Baltimore Ravens, sealed the win for the Longhorns that night, the last time they played. And so, man, I'm fired up hosting a rivalry podcast every week that we can. That's exciting to know that the Aggies and the Longhorns will be getting back together. So feel free to put in the comments what you think the Aggies are going to do, whether you're on Facebook, TikTok, or YouTube. I've got the Aggies going 7-5. I think the transition, although they're going to show flashes, I think the new coach is a good coach. There's too much talent, too much money over there in Aggie land for them to suffer very long. And I think they go 7-5. Ben gives them one more win. Ben, Blake, Will, and Josh all give them one more win than me. They say the Aggies go 8-4 in the SEC. And so that averages for the panel of dislike the Aggies at 8-4. And so new year, new head coach. He actually, I guess, has flown under the radar just a little bit because most of the news has been about DeBoer joining the Crimson Tide. Of course, that's a big deal with Nick Saban retiring. So the Aggies average panel of dislike prediction is 8-4. Although I personally have them at 7-5 this year in the overall. Next, we have the rival Longhorns, Texas. Boy, I don't mind Texas so much, just Texas, but boy, I sure hope they don't do well in their opening season. We can't have these Longhorns coming in with all their money, flinging it around. The schedule certainly benefits them, I think. And so I think the Longhorns are going to have a successful year. I don't necessarily think they'll be that good every year, but I think they were served up a nice little schedule. Of course, they've already had injury bad time. Of course, injuries are always bad, but man, this early in the season, although I guess at some degree it gives them a chance to kind of make up for it. I've got the Longhorns coming in and going 10-2 in their inaugural season in the Southeastern Conference. I think they're going to be 10-2. Ben Hayes agrees with me. He's going to go 10-2. Blake Holloman says they're going undefeated in their first trip into SEC play. I think there is some shock to coming into the SEC. Once again, I will say the Longhorns have a decent schedule. They did them a favor there, but still playing that level of talent week in, week out is difficult. It's a little easier to come in, get a W over an SEC school. They do travel up to Ann Arbor and face the defending national champions in Michigan. So that's a tough out. Blake has them going 12-0. Will and Josh agree at 11-1. So that makes the panel of dislike average that the Longhorns will be 11-1 in the Southeastern Conference this year, in their first year in the Southeastern Conference. So dropping one game. Next, we have the Tennessee Volunteers, or as I like to reference them as the Tennessee Vials. Unfortunately, Will and I agree they're going to get to 9 wins. They're going to be 9-3, a pretty favorable schedule for the Vols coming into the season. Kind of a rebuilding year. I guess we get to finally see some of Heupel's, mainly Heupel's recruits down in, and so up in Knoxville, not down, up in Knoxville. And so we'll kind of see how his recruits play out for the first time. I've got them getting to 9 wins. Ben, Blake, and Josh agree at 8-4. And so the average panel of dislike is 8-4 for the Tennessee Volunteers. Probably a little less than what their fans are expecting. I think they probably agree with me. Crazy enough, more a 9-3 Tennessee Vols team this year in the SEC. And of course, that is more than enough to keep the Vile Nation happy up there on Rocky Flop. Next, we have the South Carolina Gamecocks, and I like South Carolina. I think they got the right coach. They're not going to feel that way after the season because I've got them going 5-7, and Ben agrees with me. Josh agrees with me. And so the average for the Gamecocks on the panel of dislike is 5-7. Blake and Will both have them dropping one more game at 4-8 for South Carolina. I hate that. I like I said, I really like their coach. It may be the same thing for Vandy, right? Like I'm just not threatened by them. I think they actually come to T-Town for the first time since 2010 or 2009. Maybe that's what it was, 2009. I think 2010 we went up there and got beat by Steven Garcia, unfortunately. Next, we have the Mississippi Rebels, Ole Miss, and the Lane Train. And boy, howdy, are there a lot of people on the Lane Train. If you're on TikTok and you think the Lane Train is on the tracks, go ahead and hit that like. Give me those hearts. The lowest win total for the Ole Miss Rebels this season on the panel of dislike is 9, and that is Ben Hayes and Josh are saying they're getting a 9 wins. I've got them getting to 10 along with Will Mahan. He's got them getting to 10-2 on the Lane Train. And Blake Holloman has them at 11-1 and fighting, possibly making a trip to Atlanta for the first time in program history. And so Blake's got them at 11-1, and boy, howdy, will the hottie toddies be out in full force. My buddy Andy Duncan will be fired up especially if they get to 11-1 and the Tide does not get to that point. That will be a little wild for them. So Ole Miss Rebels, Ben's got them at 9-3. I've got them at 10-2. Blake's got them at 11-1. Will 10-2. Josh 9-3 for an average of 10-2, which would be a major season there down in Oxford, Mississippi for those Ole Miss Rebels. Next, we've got the Oklahoma Sooners, new to the Southeastern Conference. Oklahoma coming in with rival Texas, and so they'll be able to keep that Red River rivalry. If you think Oklahoma is going to get to 8 wins this season, hit that heart button. If you think you got 8 wins or more over in Oklahoma, let me know by hitting those hearts. Give me some likes, react. Feel free to give me the thumbs down if you're on Facebook. If you don't think that the Sooners are going to get over 8 wins, I've got them along. Ben and I have got them both getting to 8 wins, 8-4. Panel member Josh Thorne's got them at 9-3. What up, Jonathan? Germany, we and I got to you LSU Tigers just yet. They're just around the corner. I think you'll like some of the things I got to say about the Bayou Bengals there over on TikTok there, Jonathan. But I've got Oklahoma at 8-4. The average record for Oklahoma from the panel of dislike is 8-4, a winning season. Pretty good bowl there for Oklahoma. Of course, every time I pick Oklahoma to lose to Texas, they usually beat them. So I'll take it, though. Like I said, we just can't have Texas coming in and making us look like we're not the best conference in college football. So there's that. Next, we got the Mizzou Tigers, which most everybody's high on, but I'll be honest with you, the panel of dislike doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the Show Me State, the Tigers of the Show Me State. Huge season last year. They put it on the Vials, and anytime somebody does that to the Volunteers, I'm all about it. Mizzou does play the Crimson Tide this year. They've got a great wide receiver coming back. They did lose that hoss of a running back, and let me tell you, as a fan of a team who plays Mizzou this year, I'm pretty happy about that. I've got Missouri at 8-4. Blake and Will agree with me at 8-4. Ben and Josh go together at 7-5 for an average of 8-4 for the Tigers from the Show Me State over in Mizzou. And so we got that going on up in here. And so we'll break for right now. You got any comments? You guys got any predictions out there? Maybe hot takes there in the SEC or college football in general? You can put them down there in the comments. So let's just see how it's going over here. Make sure we're not missing anything over on the TikToks as we march on to the rest of the SEC and how that is going. And so we got a few front runners right now currently battling it out for a chance at Atlanta. And of course, we'll reveal that later in the show as well. And so we just love any comments or anything about college football. Got any pro fun stuff? We'd like to hear from that as well. Maybe some SEC championship predictions. If you've got them, you can put them there in the comments and I'll fling them up here on the screen, however that works. Technologically advanced, I am not. All right, so we got Mizzou at 8-4. We've got Oklahoma at 8-4. Ole Miss at 10-2. These are the average records that we've got. The Gamecocks at 5-7. The Vials at 8-4. Texas at 11-1. First big contender for the SEC championship. And the Aggies, the Fighting Aggies of Texas at 8-4. And Vandy at 3-9. And so we pick up with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I've got Mississippi State going 4-8, and most panel members agree with me. Ben is the only outlier. He gives them 5. Nobody thinks the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, Hail State, are going to go to a bowl game. And so the average of the panel combined together is the Mississippi State Bulldogs go 4-8. If you think that they're going to get to 5 wins, if you agree with Ben, if you're on TikTok, go ahead and hit that heart button. Give us a thumbs up over on Facebook if you think that the Mississippi State Bulldogs are going to get 5 wins instead of the 4 that most of the panel thinks is going to happen. All right. Next, Jonathan Germany. I don't know if you're still paying attention out there in TikTok land, but we got your Bayou Bengals, who I didn't realize got to 10 wins last year. I saw that defense against the Crimson Tide, and I thought, man, this team, how in the world? But Jaden Daniels, right? Jaden Daniels is how in the world. Now, I don't think they're going to have a big drop-off. I think they're going to be even better this year, actually, which is kind of crazy to say when you lose the Heisman Trophy winner. But I think sometimes you can rely too much on a quarterback. I think in the Saban years, when he got really comfortable with the quarterback, Alabama usually didn't do as well. Now, obviously, that is all relative to what Alabama's success usually looks like. But LSU, I am the outlier on the panel. I think LSU gets to 11 wins. I think they're 11-1. They drop their one loss to the Crimson Tide, and they're at 11-1. Ben, Blake, and Josh agree that they get to a 10-win season. Will is an outlier, and he thinks that they will be closer to 9-3, closer to what they were last year at 9-3. They finished 10-3 with a dub in the bowl game, but I'm thinking LSU is a contender. Actually, I think at 11-1, they get into the playoff, and they are a playoff team pretty easily at 11-1, and maybe I'm giving them too much. What up, sport guy over on YouTube? How are you doing? I hope you're all right. Got any SEC hot takes there over on YouTube? It's good to see you. Glad you're watching. All right, the LSU Tigers at 11-1, in my opinion. 10-2 is the average that the panel says. All right, we get to those big blue country Kentucky Wildcats. Blake and Josh agree that they'll get to 7-5. I've got them at 5-7 and missing a bowl game, and everyone else disagrees with me. Ben and Will have them getting to 6-6. And so along with my 5-7, they're 6-6. We have an average of the Kentucky Wildcats going 6-6 and making a bowl appearance for Big Blue, one of the lower tier appearances for Kentucky. But hey, you're Kentucky. You're pretty happy with the bowl game. Although I will say, man, anytime they're kind of like that, kind of like Auburn in the fact that anytime you don't really expect a lot out of them, sometimes they'll show up, they'll get a few wins that you're not expecting. And of course, I'd rather see Auburn or Kentucky get that kind of love rather than the Auburn Tigers. All right, we're next to the big bullies in the woods for the last few years, right? The Georgia Bulldogs. They've got to be, I don't know, who is more overjoyed? You can put in the comments, you can reply. Who is more overjoyed at the retirement of Nick Saban? Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, who probably would have a couple of more trophies on in the trophy case if it wasn't for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide, or is it Auburn, or is it the Vols? And maybe you could throw in LSU there. Like, who is more happy that Nick Saban is gone, right? Is it the Vols? Is it the LSU? Is it Auburn Tigers? Or is it Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs? Let's think about that. Give me your comments. If you see it down there, hit me up with them. Who is more happy? I've got the Bulldogs along with Blake Holland, and they're going undefeated. I got them 12-0. That means they come into Tuscaloosa in a couple of weeks and get the W. That's really the only one that I'm kind of questioning. I think otherwise it's going to be a fairly straightforward deal. I think Alabama will give them all they can handle there in Tuscaloosa. I don't think it's an easy win. I think Ben, Will, and Josh have them all dropping that trip to T-Town, which I would love to see. Just right now, I think the Bulldogs are going to get that W, and they're going to go 12-0. The panel of dislike comes to the average of 11-1. They feel like Georgia's going to go 11-1 and contend, obviously, not only for the SEC championship, but the national championship, be on that level. Next, we have the dreaded Auburn Tigers. Thank goodness we do not. The Tide does not go to the Plains this year. They come to Tuscaloosa, and we're going to see some good wide receiver play. And I guess the question everybody has is, does Auburn have enough at quarterback for the receivers to matter? And I guess we'll find out. And this is one of those years where we vary from 8 to 10 wins on the panel. Ben and I agree. We've got 10-2. We've got Auburn at 10-2. Blake, our resident Barner, has them at 8-4. And Will and Josh agree that they'll be 9-3. And so the average panel, the average of the panel combined is that Auburn will get to 9 wins. 9 wins. Now, once again, I mentioned earlier that Auburn's one of those teams that when you expect a lot out of them, they typically don't get to that level. This is not me saying that Auburn is an actual 10-win team. I just think the schedule kind of breaks in a way that they could get there. I think the same thing about Tennessee. There's a couple of other teams like that kind of the schedule lets them get to that point. And so I think Auburn's one of those teams that the schedule, the record will look a lot better than they probably actually are. But Auburn's one of those momentum teams. They get momentum, and they got a chance to do that. I think their first 4 or 5 games are at home, and then they go on the road. And by then, I think they could build some confidence that turns into a very successful season for them. But averaged panel of this, like, they are 9-3. Arkansas Razorbacks. I think we all agree on the panel this will be Mr. Pittman's last year. Unfortunately, I love Sam Pittman. I think that they like him personally, but probably not getting it done on the football field, especially with Oklahoma and Texas. You know, Texas A&M feels some of the pressure there. Obviously, Texas A&M, big rivals. But I think Arkansas kind of feels the pressure, like they've got to ascend. And so when you add 2 more teams like Oklahoma and Texas, some of these teams get moved down a rung or 2. And I think Arkansas certainly feels the pressure there. I've got them going 4-8, me, Will, and Josh. Ben has them at 3-9, and Blake says they get 2 wins, 2-10, with a loss to the UAB Blazers, that team from Birmingham. And so Arkansas just, rough season. Rough season for them coming up is what we predict. And, of course, we can be wrong. Next up, we have the Crimson Tide of Alabama, probably one of, and this is kind of crazy to say, so I'll go ahead and put it out there. I'm biased. I love the Tide. I roll with the Tide. But I think there's a little bit of like over exaggeration on the fall, right? Like, I think there's a window here where there's enough Nick Saban guys. I think that DeBoer's brought in enough, but I do think it will be a disappointment to everyone, right? Like, I think Alabama's not going to win enough, which they never do win enough for their fan base, and the fall is not going to be as far of a fall as some of the opposing teams wish. It's more like a ding dong, the witch is dead when Nick Saban retired. And we did have a lot of people leave. I'm not going to lie, man. Caleb Downs was a blow. It hurt my feelings a little bit, made me want to cry. But I think that Alabama fans are going to be disappointed. I think that opposing fans are going to be disappointed that there isn't as much a drop-off as they hoped. I've got the Tide actually at 11-1. I'm really rethinking that. I'm thinking closer to 10 or 9 wins than 12 for sure. I've got them at 11-1. Ben's got them at 10-2. Will's got them at 11-1. Josh has got them at 10-2, and Blake has them winning 9 football games for an average of 10-2. And if you've been keeping up with our predictions, that means the Tide is outside of Atlanta, but in the playoff, which I guess at the end of the day, that's what you want anyways, is in the playoff, looking at all that fun stuff. But nonetheless, we believe Alabama misses Atlanta. The average does. Maybe I shouldn't say we. I'm sure there's some disagreement there. But average Alabama at 10-2. And if you've been keeping up with the records, that puts Ole Miss and Alabama and LSU kind of battling for that third place spot. And it puts Georgia and Texas into the SEC championship. And the panel predicts that the Georgia Bulldogs will be your SEC champions this year, and obviously get a first round bye in the playoffs. And possibly, I would think, if you've gone through that gauntlet, you're probably going to be the number one overall. Josh Thorne says he sees at least 3 SEC teams in the playoff, likely 4. That probably, as he says, is not much of a hot take, as we generally have 4 in the top 10, but who knows with it being seeding for the playoffs. I think looking back, you can honestly say that it's going to be hard to keep a lot of SEC teams out. But of course, we've seen it before. People get fatigued. They get fatigued with Alabama. They get fatigued with the SEC. And so who knows how that's going to go. And I've seen people go, well, maybe it's best to skip Atlanta. And I guess that kind of comes down to injuries and hurts and bumps and bruises and how many people you've lost. But man, is depth going to mean everything this year? Like, depth is going to be huge. We've already seen Texas deal with some injuries. I think the A&M Aggies have dealt with some injuries already. And of course, that's going to come with a collision sport. But man, depth has never been more important than it is now. And so we'll see how it all plays out. Some of you are probably 3 or 4 seasons into your college football 25 prediction or game. And you probably could tell us how it kind of plays out going forward. But hey, looking forward to a great college football season, a great season of the good old fashioned dislike. And we hope that you'll join us, and we will talk at you again. And I hope that you are having a great, wonderful day. It's almost time for college football, folks. God bless.